and welcome you all here this afternoon. We'll start the meeting with a karakia from Mayor Tracy.
Ko ranganui ki runga, ko whakatuanui ki raro. Ko tātou ta ere tangata, ki wanganui, ti hei mauri ora. Ka Father above, Mother Earth below, all of us in the middle of breath of life. Mauri ora.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I'd like first of all to welcome our guests here today. First up on Public Forum, we have a representative of the Tararua Fluoride Group. But first of all, I'll also introduce our other guests. We have Sean, who's sitting down the back there from Rangitane. So Sean's role is General Manager of Tia Tahu o Rangitane. And we also have Mavis Mullins, who is the chair of Rangitane. We have two other guests arriving. They're running a little bit late, so I'll introduce them when they arrive. Before we begin, any apologies, please?
Councillor Naoma.
Councillor Naoma, thank you. Any other apologies? Could somebody please move the apology be accepted? Thank you, Kerry. Seconded, Councillor Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, I'll now introduce Anne Sargent, who's going to speak to us today. Now, Anne, you have 5 minutes speaking time. We'll ring a bell at 4 so that you've got a minute's warning before the 5 minutes is up. So the floor is all yours. Thank you.
My name is Anne Sargent, and I have concerns about fluoride, or rather hydrofluoride silicic acid, a toxic waste product from fertilising industry being put into our water supply. As the Community Development Committee, you have responsibility to look into the water supply. As the Wellbeing Committee, you have responsibility to look into the health of Dannevirke. Highly qualified scientists, dentists, doctors, and other professionals have spoken out to prevent happening again in New Zealand what happened with lead, asbestos, thalidomide. Those cures that were thought to be the answer to existing problems were found to be very detrimental to health and stopped. Fluoride information the government based its decisions on was fraudulent. In 1954 to 1964, the comparisons they did on tooth decay in children living in Hastings and Napier, fluoridated in one area and not the other, was not a true sample of what was happening in both those areas. The criteria for measuring tooth decay was changed during the trial, making the trial null and void. That didn't stop the null and void result being accepted and fluoridation of the water given the thumbs up. In November 2014, International Scientific Critique looked into New Zealand's August 2014 fluoridation report, and I quote from that report. Sections of the international critique focus on health risks and margin of safety considerations, which the New Zealand report claims to are met, but clearly are not met. Also in that report, correspondence between Professor Skegg and Professor Gluckman. And I quote, the literature on potential risks is vast and quite complex. We consider making fluoridation the subject of one of our emerging issues papers. This would have required us to appoint a panel of experts to review the extensive literature that has been pouring out. And it goes on to state, the quickest response would be for you and me to issue a joint statement. And the FNZ added, as pointed out by Professor Skegg, there is a huge amount of scientific data on the health risks of fluoridation. To give responsible advice on fluoridation safety requires a detailed analysis, never the quick response. Common sense tells us when there are suspected side effects to hydrofluorosilicic acid, then in-depth research is needed, especially when protective clothing is essential to recover that byproduct from the phosphate fertilizer. Just a note, Chemicals that are used in fluoridated water supply are not the pharmaceutical grade chemicals used in dental products, where even there you are told, do not swallow. And I wonder why. A quote from Dr. William Hertzy: if industrial fluoride gets into the air, it's a pollutant. If it gets into a lake, it's a pollutant. If it gets into the river, it's a pollutant. If it gets into the sea, it's a pollutant. If it gets into the soil, it's a pollutant. Goes straight into your drinking water, it's not a pollutant. How amazing. Councils have been mandated by government with the threat of huge financial penalties to add hydrofluorosilicic acid to their water supply. With all the available scientific data, why can't councils unite, put together a delegation of representatives and approach the government to withdraw the mandate? I hope you've all read the summary of directives to councils that was emailed to the council by Linda on June the 27th. And I quote from that summary on the threatened fine. A health department lawyer claims they have no intention of fining councils. I'll let that sink in. So, seeing you are understandably concerned about the financial burden it would put on ratepayers, you now have an out to change your decision to fluoridate our water. But if council still intends to go ahead with fluoridating our water, what do you intend to do to provide hydrofluorosilicic acid-free water for those who do not wish to have their rights to refuse medication negated, a right given under the 1990 Bill, Clause 11? Will you give us a free, pure water collection point like Hastings, or as Gordon suggested last week, provide a tank with fluoridated water for those who wish to have their water fluoridated? And finally, another quote from Dr. William Hertzy: if you want to prevent sunburn, you don't drink suntan lotion, you put it on your skin. So if you want to have the benefits of fluoride for oral health, you put it on the surface of your teeth, you don't swallow it. Thank you. I'll email my presentation to you. The scientific data I have referred to, it's more fully in the notes. A list of scientific data regarding hazards to health and notes on our Bill of Rights. And I really ask you all to take the time to read what I send you. Don't just file it or toss it aside without looking at it. Your decision on this matter is so important for the community and those not yet born. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. That was really well delivered. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
If there's any questions, I would try and answer them.
Councillor Long.
You, Chair. More a statement than anything. Thank you very much for that. The suntan lotion, I hadn't heard that one before. Point taken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that and the fact that this, when it's put into all these places, it's a pollutant, but when we as receptors take it in our drinking water, it's not a pollutant. How can you change that? Even medical science, how can you change it? Well, thank you all for listening.
More than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you wish. Thank you very much. I'll move on to see, are there any notifications of items not already on the agenda? None. We'll move on now to declarations of conflict of interest. No, no declarations of conflicts. So we'll go through the confirmation of the previous meeting's minutes. Just wait. We'll wait till the room's cleared. Minutes of last meeting. We'll go through page by page. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. And that's the lot. Could somebody please move that these minutes be received? Thank you very much, Councillor Erin. Seconded by Councillor Long. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Now we move on to the presentations. I'm sorry that your colleagues haven't arrived yet, so you might have to.
We're adaptable.
Of course you are. Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. It's lovely to have you both here. And the floor is yours.
That was simple. Straight up, I try to pass the wall to the chair, and no. Kia ora, everyone. It's a pleasure to come and speak with you today about some of the aspirations and hopes we have for Taurua, and specifically around housing. But there's a couple of things I've tagged on to here as well for the sake of a conversation, I guess, today. So my name is Sean Lyons. I'm the General Manager for Te Tāhua Rangatani, which is our economic development and housing po within Rangatani o Tamakinui Arua. I'm also here speaking as the program lead for Tūmaira Investments, who are our post-settlement group that manage our funds that we receive from treaty settlements. Yes.
Excuse me. It's mihi nui, kia koutou. Lovely to see you all. And I'm here as chair of Rangitani, but also as a board member of Te Tāhua, our economic arm, to support Sean in the presentation. Kia ora.
Do I click this, or do you going to
Try.
go? I'm going to try to turn it on. There you go. There we go. Okay. Today, I guess we're going to be talking about a number of things, and we're going to start off with the whole question of housing and what our aspirations are on the lands that we own within Tamakinui Arua, or Tararua, as it's generally known. And it's fair to say that housing is a mess. It's a mess everywhere. In New Zealand, we haven't been building enough. Many of the homes we've got in our community are tired, old, they're not warm. And to be honest, people pay extraordinary rents to rent homes that I probably wouldn't allow my pets now to live in here. And so we're going to have to do some change. And under the previous government, we had a lot more positive signals of that. And they funded Tūmaira Investments to do master planning and development work on 3 sites here and 1 in the Wairarapa. The guarantee of future funding after we submit it has puts everything in the air. So maybe stick it through. Tūmaira Investments are the custodians of the property, and the properties we're talking about are Matamo School, Hillcrest Enivic, and Hillcrest Paiatua. And there's a difference between how some of those properties are, Hillcrest Enivic and Hillcrest Paiatua. We actually don't have a specific iwi link or a cultural heritage on those sites. Okay, so this was part of a settlement, whereas Matamo is a cultural redress site because there were activities that happened there historically that Rangatani, it was sacred to them. We are getting to the point where we are looking to do business. We're just finalising business cases on those sites and working with the iwi, the local iwi here, to identify exactly what we think is the best way forward, bearing in mind everything is in the air financially. We've got some guiding values, okay, and I guess these are I've shared with this with council prior as Whetū Whenua. You know, we're putting a real caring on the land, and each one of those pieces of land are quite beautiful, and whatever we do there needs to enhance them. I would be as bold to say as I think they're the best development sites in Paihātua and Dannevirke. And the geotech and the underground surveys and all that tell us the same. For us, it's about knowing our whakapapa and going back to that and what was sacred to them and how those lands were previously involved. And also understanding the aspirations and needs of our community. And that's our own people, plus the people that are attached to them, you know, and we are part of a community. We're not isolated from community. We're very much front and centre. And the latest stats from the census suggest we're becoming a bigger part as time goes on, because we're very good breeders, and that's the reality. Property development and housing is expensive business. We started this exercise with an aim to build 100 homes over those pieces of land. And if you think that there'll be a mix of tenure and typology within that, and you think about developing roading and underground services, we are looking somewhere close to 60 or $70 million worth of investment. Okay, these aren't things that you can just blink an eye and hopefully you can get it past the bank manager. There's significant developments. And it will see the biggest housing development in this region probably since the 50s or 60s, just in terms of scale. Each site is planned to have a mixture of tenure type and community type. The sort of people that are there. So there'll be rental, owner occupiers, singles, couples, families, kamatua, and there is quite a bit of work going on at the moment. So it's tenure blind. So two houses could be alongside each other. One could be an affordable rental and one could be an owner occupier, and you won't be able to know. There'll be, so it kind of makes it very embracing for a community to put all its elements together rather than to say, oh, there's the rentals over there and that. It'll be mixed and matched is the plan. This is a little bit out of date because we're in 24. So the planning and design phase is kind of extended. And we have some pretty good plans, but is how we fund them now is going to be the challenge. Can we just skip forward one? Two. No, one more the other way. We understand the housing market's broken, so we are currently getting some signals from government that they may not be into this like they were 18 months ago. The flip side of that is that other parties are quickly coming to the table and are talking to us. So there's quite a strong movement within the developer base in New Zealand for build to rents, and that's attracting a different financial model. And there's some work currently happening with MB where they are looking to preference build to rent homes and provide such benefits. The most extreme one I've heard is if you do a build to rent and you sign up for a 10-year period, that the GST on the build would be returned. Okay, that's, you know, these things actually all start to stack up within a business case. MB have suggested they're coming to the market with a full range of options around build to rent in November this year. And that's going to be one of the biggest, probably in government focus on housing going forward. Feel free to just cover if you want to say. There's also quite a disincentive in other areas at the moment that IRD are working on to make it easier for developers. I guess we fall into a charitable developer, and that has started to happen. Like the Bright Line thing changed at the beginning of this week down to 2 years. But there's suggestions that could be changed if you're a landlord and the tenant decides to buy the property, that could be all off the table anyway, because it's trying to help people into home ownership. We I guess, concerned that the cost of new builds could be out of sync with what our community can afford. So there's considerable work going in with companies like Simplicity Living and other developers who really have taken a different approach to construction. Simplicity Living's is an offshoot of the Simplicity Kiwi Saver Fund. And they take a view to construction that the old New Zealand build approach doesn't really work. It just adds cost. So they use more a production thing. So most of their buildings are built of concrete, including the roof. Okay, and they build them in such a way that they can have a 3-story walk-up apartment with 18 different sized apartments within it, with people moving in after 4 months. And every 1.8 days later, other people moving into the next one and the next one and the next one. Okay, so it's fast paced, and they're building for 100 years, not the current 50-year building code. It's a different model, and I'm actually going up to the Innovation Centre in the next 2 weeks to spend some time actually looking at the practice of this. It has some challenges because our workforce probably aren't skilled to do this. But the difference is 4,500 a square metre down to 2,700 a square metre. So if you're thinking that difference over 100 homes is huge. This is where we've got to so far, and there's still some more work coming on these plans, but we wanted to share these with you basically so you can sort of see what our thinking is as much. And I understand we are looking to be able to submit subdivision plans towards the end of this month, beginning of next month, as part of our milestones with Ministry of Housing and Urban Design. Marama School is going to be a mix of papakainga and kai production of some works going on in this space. And I guess we've got to look at quite closely at our processes. I'm actually speaking to our Charitable Trust Board next Monday to talk them through how we have selection for people to live on that papakainga and how that would look and how do we manage that with whānau. We have Ed first doing a little bit of work on the land farming component and what that land is, and it's taking some more advance of the work that this council did in its crop work with Mark and this one. It's a matter of time before you become the fruit bowl of the centre, I guess, because your client's getting better for growing multiple crops. Hillcrest Anything, this is kind of a piece of work that's still in process, but you'll see there's a whole lot of different configurations of homes there. I guess the change in funding models may change how those look. Yeah. So when we do that subdivision application, we won't be breaking it down into small little sections initially, okay, because some of our things are likely to be larger developments. It might be multiple terraced housing and stuff like that. We are certainly looking at things that are more consistent with smaller homes, smaller gardens, low maintenance, heavily dependent on things like solar, probably have a microgrid within that whole development. And there's also, you'll see in the middle, there's actually a community space that's been allocated to it, which would, we're trying to nurture place-based living and we're developing a community within a bigger community here. So it's quite a cool one. Hi, tour. Of all of them, I'd say this is my pick. It's a beautiful site. I always feel good walking through it. We've found that the local community there are really excited about the things that are going on there. We've had, I was at a Marae meeting. I had a woman tell me she lost her virginity on that site. Okay, and she must have been 70. Okay. But the trees and all that environments, we've got arborists going in and having a look at. There's some beautiful kauri and natives there that we're looking to retain a good hunk of that. So it is going to be quite a wonderful space. The typologies, I guess what you're seeing here is some samples, and there'll be some standalone single-story things, and they're going to be built in such a way for that allow people who may develop mobility issues to be able to ergonomically work well in that community. There'll be those two legs. Can we just go back one? You'll see in that build to rent 3-story walk-ups, and that's going to be pretty provocative if we get to that stage within this context, because there's nothing like it in this community. But there are a style that's actually coming and it works for many people's lifestyles. And terrace double story, I think, is probably more likely to happen. But there are significant cost savings by going to the 3-story walk-up. Largely better use of land too, and environmental. Look through. We are working with an architectural, a landscape architect to come up with some ideas of how these places will feel, because feel is really important. People want to live in a beautiful place. They want to feel like this is somewhere they can put their roots down. And we want people to. We're looking, I am always stunned by your gardens, that community garden bring in play too. And you're going to see a lot more of that. That is part of the cost of living crisis, but it's also something about people being settled and coming back to some of the basics. Solar powered, obviously, Tumaia Energies in this space, and we're very supportive of that. We just see it as the future. We see it as part of it. And pet friendly, people, it's really important. We find that whānau want to take their dog or their cat. How we manage that, it's going to be a challenge for us. I guess the opportunities for our communities, we get involved in the builds, but it will be a different type of involvement than what people have had in the past. We actually want, we are looking at an engagement process that will see us talking to the community, inviting them in, having a good look, and having a lot more community feedback on how we're developing that. We think there's opportunities for people to be tenants or homeowners or all sorts of, we're prepared to look at anything. The envy stuff they're signaling is that would offer 10-year leases in the form that you do in Germany or France, rather than the average rental agreement that you have in a New Zealand context. So there's some significant law changes required. And I guess there's going to be opportunities for people to invest in this work. If we do build to rents, they'll potentially be set up as things that will be available for bonds, and a lot of the KiwiSaver funds have indicated they're keen to buy those bonds. So if you think about your local government bonds, it's the same model. And the good thing about KiwiSaver, the KiwiSaver funds have indicated they don't want a board seat. They want minimal influence, then it's going to be, you know, their investment in it, their money is, they can kind of be influenced by the New Zealand population. They say, we want you to invest locally. We want you guys to start investing in our infrastructure in New Zealand. You're going to do the same thing with Three Waters, I guess. I am the contact for this sort of stuff locally, but it is driven by the Tumara Investments Board, and I was hoping Aaron and co would be there, but Aaron's actually on that same board, so he'll be another contact, and Mavis is obviously involved very closely. Any questions on the housing book?
Councillor Wards.
More a statement and perhaps a little segue into what you're going to speak to next, Sean. But look, congratulations. Mavis may well remember, it wasn't hundreds of years ago, but when we used to have the Tararua Locality Planning Group, Oriana Paiwai had a huge input into advocating to get a housing strategy for our district. And although, you know, I look back at that occasion and think, it'd be nice to see some of this get off the ground. This is exactly what you're doing, you know, and so huge ups to the team for actually putting the line in the sand and getting on with some stuff. So with that strategy in mind, you know, this is one of the little key parts of the puzzle that will actually help see that happen. So congratulations. My question, and you might be answering it further on, Sean, would be the involvement, and as you look into what council's planning to do with the district plan, because the moment it's a very enabling one, and that's, you know, been fantastic for some reasons, but it's got us into a lot of trouble for a number of others. So what would be some of the, I mean, I know you've got a couple of thoughts further on, but as you look to the next 5 to 10 years with council undertaking a district plan, other than some of the things I know you're going to talk about, what do you think might be some of the opportunities or the hope that you referred to during our LTP stuff that are yet to be realised, and that we should probably be quite cognizant of as we go about thinking about the plan? Because I mean, that's another long-term big dream picture. So I know you've obviously got some ideas, but as obviously a major player and big influencer in some of the things that we might be doing, what could be some of the things that we need to be mindful of as a council as we start to go down that path?
It's a pretty open question.
Sorry, it's a bit, it's very high level, I know that, but
I think being an enabling council is really important. And I can say to date, my experience working directly with your officers has been very, very helpful. Okay, we have been able to talk to your engineers to make sure that if we did this, we don't flood that end of town down there, because the services are up for it. Because sorry, because it's easy for us to create a problem for you the way we do things, you know, and growth does have problems. We're currently working closely with Brian and his team around the regional infrastructure fund, coming together as a joint Rangatani council proposal to government to secure funds for a number of projects. And one of those Mavis's hearts in is Te Apiti and the work we do in tourism. But if we grow Woodville, we know that we probably haven't got enough water to grow a population there. So you've then got to look at this as a tourism's part of it, but it's actually got to be a little bit of a development around Woodville. So none of these things work in isolation. When we talk housing, we talk social services, we talk health, we talk schools. So the power is how to pull those people together and have okay, we agree on the direction. What do we need to nail off? And that's the right.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because it is, the time does seem to be well, the time is always now to how we look at the next 10, 20 years, you know, the next generation. So I think it is about being the enabler. It is about bringing to life what our partnership really is, so that we do work closer together. I think it's also understanding that within our district, we have settled iwi that bring asset. So how does council ensure that as partners that they feel that that is a reality and that we can make these aspirations that we have for our communities and our people real? Because what you've seen with the housing, that's a big elephant, you know, if we're to do all of that. So it's certainly not time bound. It is aspirational, but we are absolutely determined to do what we can do to help lift the means and the aspirations of our people, because they haven't been very aspirational. We haven't been able to be aspirational in the past, put it that way. So now's the chance to do it, and we also don't feel like we have a lot of time to really make things happen. So that's, but yeah, don't know if that's answered it.
I appreciate through you, Chair, Alison. I appreciate that insight, Mavis, because you know, when I think back 7 years ago when we put that strategy together, you know, it was all, you know, there's argy-bargy going on even back then. But to actually see something positive that would fit with the aspirations that were referred to in there, and it'd be interesting in 10 years' time to get that whole group back together again and see that was then and this is now. Have we actually managed to achieve some of those aspirations?
And I'm just going to add, because I've now got the mic, but the reality is our aspirations don't finish there. We're feeling quite aggressive at the moment in terms of some of the economic opportunities that are there, especially with the RIF, and how we, you know, we missed out badly last time. Well, we damn well can't miss out this time. It really has to be our catch cry. And the other thing is, we want to ensure that we can be part of some of the long goal infrastructure partnerships, because it's not just about the fancy stuff that's on top, it's about what sits underneath as well. And we certainly have some aspiration to be engaged there as well.
Do you mind if I introduce my two colleagues? And maybe you guys can pull the chair up because you might have some say on this too. Darren is the CEO for Tumaira. So he can introduce himself a little bit more, no doubt. And Michael is the Chief Operating Officer for Tumaira Investments. And I guess they are a settlement group. And Aaron Cardiana, he's a director of that Tumaira Investments. These are the guys actually who own the assets. I'm playing with other people's stuff locally, but hopefully. More importantly, I think they're going to hold us to account, which is great. But you know, having an aspiration for growth, and I think we're really conveying to you guys that that is what Rangitane have. And Tamakinuiara, these guys are going to become, in my opinion, are going to be central to your partnerships. What do you think?
Aroha mai mo moa bātou e Ngāti Tūreiti hoi anō, tini whetū ki te rangi ko rangitane ki te whenua, rangitane ki runga, rangitane ki raro, rangitane ki koho, rangitane ki roto, nei rā te kaupapa o rangitane tūmaira no Tamakinui Arua me Wairarapa. No reira, kia ora no tātou katoa. First and foremost, our apologies for being late. We misjudged the amount of traffic that flows between Masterton and up here to Tamaki Nui Arua. And we did ring Sean to say that we were going to be a bit late, and he said, look, there's no speed limits around here, you can go 250 kilometres to get here. So he did not take that advice, or otherwise we would have ended up in Napier. Hoi anō, my name is Darren Apanui. I am the CEO of Rangitane Tūmaira Group, which is, as many of you know, is our post-settlement entity, including the subsidiaries. I'll let my other two whānau members actually introduce themselves, and then we can talk a little bit further about the kaupapa that sits in front of us. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou katoa. So I'm Michael Jameson, Chief Operations for Rangitane's investment business. I've worked in the public sector and the private sector in a number of capacities, and this is the most exciting sector. They're on the beginning of, I think, a very a journey that I think is going to be really good. Having seen a lot of businesses, a lot of entities, been inside of central government, worked closely with local government at different stages, I think we're pretty well placed to kick off and get some things done, which is great. So I'm really looking forward to this next chapter.
Tēnā koutou, koe Aaron Kārdina tōku ingoa, here hau no Rangitane ki Tamaki Nui Aroa. Kia ora everybody, Aaron Kārdina, local familiar face, I'm sure everyone. I really like Sharon's baking, I must say, one of the highlights. Hey, Director of Tūmaira Investments and also governance of our local Runanga entities. And I must just say that Darren also rang me when he was running late, and my answer was, at the council chambers you sing a waiata, so I feel late. So that one I was also late, so we'll nail that out today. The other thing that I'll say is that from Sean's presentation earlier, us three actually visited the Simplicity Living housing complex in Auckland, one of them, and the question was asked, could you see this in Dannevirke? Could you see these being built in Dannevirke and whānau living in them? And my instant answer was no, probably not. But I guess what the difference is with those buildings that Sean was explaining is that they're nice, they're warm, they're new, they're healthy. And I guess although it's not what we're used to seeing, 3-story high concrete buildings, it's a much of an improvement to what most of our whānau that are living in some of the state houses, etc., are living in at the moment. So I wouldn't rule that idea out. I guess from my point of view, it is an improvement, although it's different. And one of the cool things, just quickly to note from that, is that we were standing in one of the 2nd-story rooms where there was a family moving in that was going to get a 10-year lease on that. So they were set in stone effectively. They knew that they were going to be there for 10 years so they could make it their own, which was a family of single mum with 6 kids, I think, or something like that. So anyway, kia ora.
I guess there's other elements to housing that are on the peripheral that clip into these that Michael and Darren are closely working on. Where we start thinking about Three Waters stuff, that's coming in. Okay, and I don't know what the implications of those are. I'm really focused on a slightly smaller picture, but there's also how do we build, and how do we build in such a way that we utilise local resources where we can. So Michael's led me on some work with Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment around alternative building things, so a different type of building process, which means we all have to learn. Your building inspectors will have to learn. We're all going to be changing in this stuff, but that's kind of the excitement of it. And what worked in the 1950s, that was great in the 1950s, but we're 2025 now, almost. And, we're talking a project here that could take 10 years. So, and we're building for 100-year life of that home. So, some forward thinking is going to need it. So we also need to make sure they're fully set up for engineers. All that stuff's got to be there because that's what our whānau expect now.
To maybe help and not to replicate that some of the discussion that you may have already had. What I'm thinking of is that maybe if Sean's talked about some of the development that we see that could happen here in this particular rohe. But I'm going to ask Michael just to give a bit of a wider overview of the housing context. Then what I can do is then fill in the picture of how we see infrastructure playing in all of our developments throughout, not only in the Tararua area, but also in the Wairarapa area, because the two are interconnected. And then the third part will then, how then does that actually work, working alongside councils, definitely our runanga, our strength in this particular region. And then the third part is collaboration, which is absolutely critical in the whole infrastructural development process going. So I'm just going to hand over to you, Michael.
Can I just stop you one moment, please? We've got a couple of people who have indicated they'd like to ask a question. Are you happy for that to happen now? So Councillor Long, followed by Councillor Johns.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, but I'll just ask one for this beginning because Michael's going to be talking about the housing, so that's where I was interested. But the question I would ask is of Aaron, why do you not see people living in the 3-storey concrete simplicity structures? Thank you.
Yeah, to clarify, that was my first response to the question. Then I sort of went on to say that, yeah, look, it would be definitely an improvement for some of our people, just probably not what our people are used to. So you get there, it's very nice, it's 3-storey, it's got woven in, Māori designs, all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's just very, very different to what we've always lived in Aotearoa. So that was why I instantly answered that. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Ellison. Thanks you guys, it's most interesting. But one query I've got is, how do you get on if somebody wants to buy one of the homes in one of the blocks there, how do they get on with banks lending on that proposition, knowing that it can't be sold effectively? It's back to the
traditional Maori land problem, doesn't it? Banks not lending because they can't sell it. Those things go to the government.
But all these sites are spoken, other than that one, the sites are spoken about funeral.
Individual farms.
So if we did that big 3-storey thing, you're building this way in the future potentially be strata tile.
One of the things that Simplicity talked to us about was the future of their premises, and particularly in that exact situation. And because they're building them for 100 years, or in their case, they're saying we think they'll be 130, 150-year homes in terms of, we're happy to be the mortgage provider for those homes because we know they're well built and we know they're going to last. So we're happy to take those mortgages on, and we'll do it at a rate less than the banks because we don't have to take 2% back to Australia out of the rate. So we really like that. We've been working quite closely. Simplicity have been actually really good teachers for us. A couple of things that stick to mind. They talk about production, not construction. And the way they get their costs 30% lower than typical build costs is by having a constant flow of builds ahead, which allows their subbies and others, which they only have 2 sets, to move on to the next one. So they're not out looking for work. They're not out putting a premium on the gap they may have and all that kind of stuff between the next job. So they're getting their costs really low, and they're thinking about building something that's really good quality and fit for purpose. They will also be happy to mortgage provider. And when I think about the iwi, I think, well, that's something we could do too. We're not incapable of being in that service sector, and we can also partner up with people that want to partner up with us that are very good at that. So that's certainly not off the cards for us. We'd be interested in those sorts of discussions, I think, over time.
Thank you. Councillor Steve, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair Ellison. In some ways, this is not new because in the days I grew up, we had Hart Girl and Robert Shaw Crescent, and all my mates were down there, and we had a good set of friends, But and it was interesting. Sean made the comment about living in the now, and you made the comment that we wouldn't be prepared to live in the now because we're not used to that. But then you did qualify it after that. So that's good that we are looking through the lens going forward. And I like the comment you're saying about this build cost, because that's the key factor, the efficiency. If you can get the efficiency factor right, you'll do this. But the question I ask, so a person signs up for a building, gets a 10-year lease on it, right? And it's like owning an apartment in a rest home. You don't own it, right? So you don't get the capital gain. So the 10 years comes along, you want to get out, but it goes straight back to you guys.
The thing that I think has to change in New Zealand is that houses are homes and not financial instruments. We've all got, we've kind of, most people make their money by buying and selling homes to each other, and it's actually not really getting all the outcomes for us. So if we were to think about these in that context, the number of people that come into these homes aren't in the housing market because they don't have the money to make choices, market-based choices. They're actually in a different market altogether. Coming into that rental market long term gives you the stability, nice, warm, safe place to live without having to put as much money into it in the first place, I suppose. So you don't get as much out of the other end. That's true.
Supplementary, yeah, that's what I was meaning, because like I'm of the generation, we built our family home and we stayed there till mum and dad passed. You know, that's how it works. And our family, I'm not saying for everybody, I'm not knocking people that do it the other way, because that's the way they're wired. Yeah, but it's nice to know that security for you guys, you're not in it for the, you know, well, no, more the point, the people that buy into it can't capitalise on what your vision is. That's what I'm trying to make sure that's not going to happen.
Yeah, because then that makes it hard for the next person.
Yeah, exactly.
Same problem. So we've got to sort of deconstruct that. And again, for this sector of the group, you know, of the market we're talking about, we're not talking about the whole market. They can do what they want. The housing market will continue, but there's certain people that just can't participate in that market, and they still need a home.
Good on you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll let Darren carry on.
Just to add a little bit further to what Michael said, and it's about, and I think crux to his kōrero to you was that it's not to be seen as a financial instrument, but more of a home. So our whole premise of why we want to do this type of development is it's based on being able to, and if you go back into history and you have a look at how we've all developed as a society, in the 50s, 60s and 70s, we were flush with a whole lot of things, because one of the key fundamental points of why we were able to do that was that we all had warm homes. And so therefore what we're trying to do is take away the stress of not having a warm home and having something that they can go home to, because we believe that that's the base, a warm home, a safe home, a solid home, a home that is really strong in terms of energy functionality, will give our people the opportunity to be able to grow and then diminish the amount of time that they might want to think about in terms of employment and other aspirational things in their life. So that's where we're coming from. We're coming from an intergenerational viewpoint, and then we're focusing it on the ability to be able to build a really nice warm home for them to be able to do that. Now, the ownership issue, yeah, you are right, that there could be things where we might have a bit of issue with how does a person want to buy that off us. But that to me is just a very, very small process to the overall development of how we look at the development of our people going forward. It's interesting that you also talk about how, you know, you would meet up with your people down at the end of the street and play with your schoolmates. We actually see these processes as that community gathering point. We see that how we actually develop these structures and these forms of opportunity that sits in front of us is that ability to be able to do that, and creating those areas of maybe community gardens and a whole range of other things that keep the community tight and keep them in a space where they can actually look at things together in their whole aspirational viewpoint. So it's not just about the bricks and mortar that goes into it, it's about the philosophy of why we're pulling it all together.
Further questions at this point? Councillor Carey.
Thanks, Kelly. It was really just a note. I was really interested in your comments, but just in the last couple of days, I've actually read there's a really, really interesting article I've been reading about housing in Europe and in Germany, Denmark and France. And actually it's very, very similar to this, actually really, really similar. And they talked, you wouldn't think there's a crisis, but there's a huge crisis in Europe, not similar to us, but probably worse. But they're talking about they really have to change a lot of the ways of doing things and getting away from the acetone for profit style, and very similar to what you're saying. So I was quite interested you've come here today. I didn't know you were really until I read the minutes. I read the agenda a couple of days, but it was just quite timely that I was been reading this. I was really interested in the article, but I might even send it on to you. It was from one of the organisations like Newsweek or Times or somewhere. So it might be of interest for you to have a look at it. But anyway, thanks.
Any more you guys want to say?
You didn't.
That's right.
Oh, you back on.
Yeah, that's right. Staying at 180. I just want to carry on to a couple more things. One of the signal, and I guess part of that is we've started some work, and I guess it came about from the Wairarapa district plan work, and they started looking at a Māori purposes zoning within the context of their district plan. Tūmairā and Rangatani and Wairarapa were strongly supportive of that. It allows us to do more on whenua Māori, where the district plan was silent on things like papakainga and stuff like that. So I've been working with Amy and her team, and we'll be coming back to talk to you about an engagement process that we hope to do, a joint community engagement with council, because we ourselves have got to sell it to our own people so people understand what it allows, what it doesn't. But at the moment, we're currently running a series of papakainga coaching and mentoring workshops for whānau, and we have about 22 whānau groups looking at papakainga within this region. Okay, so this is stuff we've kind of got to get on play with. Fortunately, a lot of councils have already done this, so we've been able to identify who probably has a more progressive and processes and policies that would easily align with your district plan. So with a view that hopefully identify some that literally we just twink out the Hastings bit and replace it with Tararua, or, you know, and there's multiple different examples we're looking to do. We also see there's some advantage in aligning what we have here with our whānau and the Wairarapa, because it, from our perspective, makes it easier to deal with a very similar district plan. And we probably have we can probably foresee that in sometime in the future, it may be the same district plan. So we starting to think this. So this is just to signal this. It's not to surprise anyone, but it is quite an exciting challenge for the use of whenua Māori.
Thank you for that, Sean. Can I just add something to that? A few years ago, a group of us were fortunate enough to be taken out to the papakainga housing at Flaxmere by the Mayor of Hastings. And that was such an inspiration to us. You know, I know when the Hillcrest site in Pahiatua was first identified, the rumours that went around town were, you know, state housing and what have you. And once you explain to people that these are brand new, dry, warm, healthy homes, they look after them. We were really impressed. They were so immaculate. The whole establishment was. So that was good to hear you mention Hastings.
And I guess the next thing I wanted to signal was, and I've briefly spoken to Kata about this, and I'm meeting with her tomorrow. But we became quite aware. We run Hama Ora, which is the old Heartland site in Pahiatua, and it's overtraded. But simply, the building isn't big enough. There's quite a lot of community need down there. And we went down and looked at other buildings in that town, and most of them were reasonably shonky, the ones that were available, and most of them were unsuitable. So, you know, taking the liberty that I usually do on things, we went and started looking at your buildings and that are fully utilised, because already all the other social service agencies have indicated a desire to collaborate and be housed together. So I guess we've still got to work out how this process would be, but effectively the idea is to take over your town hall, because you guys don't even use it. When you have meetings in Paiatua, you will go to the sports centre or across the road in the newly refurbished one. It gets no rental, so I've offered Raj $1 a year for the next 20. I'll go get the money shortly. And the idea is that we, I guess, work with the local community to identify what this should look like in a Whaiatua sense, but it will also reinvigorate that library down there. So it would make it a real community hub, which has been something you've had in your district plan ever since I've started working down here, but we didn't sort of have a pathway. This is kind of the pathway, is what we're saying. I've done work like this in New England with Rick Harwood, and that was based on reinvigorating libraries. We're taking it the other way. We're talking about attaching social services in such a way that the library would be a beneficiary, but really it's going to be a beneficiary because of more foot traffic, and create that space there. The plus side for you guys, you're struggling to make your budgets work well for you, so you might have a new tenant in there. We'll be hitting you for a really cheap rent. And the intent is just to kind of enhance the experience that our citizens have down there. So at the moment, everything seems to be spread in different directions. People are constantly walking one end of the street to the other. If there are people that like budgeting and that's all in the same area, it becomes a little bit of a one-stop shop. So we hopefully you guys will be favourably disposed to that thinking, that we just see it as an upside for the community, for our services. And most of them none of them own their buildings down there. They all lease buildings, so potentially it would save them some money, which gives them more money to use in other areas of their operational budgets. So that's kind of our thinking there. Those are the only two other things I wanted to signal.
Thank you for that, because you mentioned that when we met last in here, and I must admit, as a Pāhiatua person, I got pretty excited at the thought, and it certainly does lean towards what we are looking at as a council in terms of rationalising services and bringing things together into hubs. So, yeah, that's a pretty exciting opportunity. Are there any other questions at all? Councillor Long.
Through you, Chair. We were talking about the housing before. Have you looked at transportable houses built brand new in factories?
Yeah, we have looked at that off-site manufacturing component and a range of technologies. I guess, you know, what's the best way to do this, and it may not be the same type of home in every place. And let's be honest, you don't want a development that all looks the same. Yeah, it'll start to look like a Somerset otherwise, you know, and that's kind of not. It doesn't really fit well within a community structure. Generally, you want some variation in look and feel and need. You know, I guess one of the groups we're talking to are a Māori funded organisation that just opened their 8th retirement village. Okay, in Tauranga, and that's part of Hapai, and they actually have developed in such a way that the capital gain stays with the people who occupy it, which is quite different from the usual models. And if you think about it, I remember Peter Wimstead sharing with me, they did some data analysis. There's about 300 homes that they knew of when they did their housing study of people who were 70 plus, stuck in a 3 or 4 bedroom home. They locked all the other bedrooms off because they couldn't afford an $800,000 2 bedroom or 1.5 bedroom retirement thing, because it was more than the value of their home. By offering something like this, which would give those people an opportunity to trade out of their home, that would then open up those homes for families. People who are starting on the housing register or the housing journey. And yeah, I started with a doer-upper in Ex-Railway College. Many of us might have started that way. And that was our first homes. So it's about how do we also get some opportunities to change the locks that are currently sitting in our housing market and our and holding our community back.
Really valid points, actually. And historically, one of our local vicars at our Anglican church many years ago got up in the pulpit one Sunday and raised eyebrows very quickly when he suggested how many houses there were in Pahiatua with one person living in a 3-bedroom house, and why couldn't Mr. Brown move in with Mrs. Jones and he could mow the lawns and she could do the cooking. So the upshot of that was it did have a very humorous ending. There was gasping in the church. However, when David Carruthers was leaving our community, I organised in our old courthouse a mock court, and we brought a whole lot of well-known people in and charged them with offences. And that vicar was charged with inciting amoral behaviour in the over 80s, and he lost the case. Gerald Leather defended him and lost. So that, yeah, that point has been made in the past, and it's really quite sad because those people live a lot in isolation, simply because they just don't have company. So yeah. I love what you're suggesting.
Well, I actually trained as a psychologist, and I've been reading a lot of work on loneliness lately, which the Director General of Health in the US has identified a whole lot of consequences for communities, and it is the biggest risk in the next 20 years, our communities. And people who are lonely, it's got the help, we think it's just the mental health issue. Physically, it's got the same impact of them smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay, there's a whole range of medical outcomes and other health outcomes. We literally shave 15 years off their lives. Okay, these are the things that we're looking to change with our housing models, with everything, really. We need to get community back to active citizenship. And these are kind of good things. They were the things that our founders established our communities on. But it was a good reason, because people actually live better lives. They live longer, they live healthier, they're connected.
Thank you for that, Sean. I think we'll wrap this up now, but before we do, I think we're owed a waiata, I understand.
Well, of course. Yeah. I'm so glad that I have some great voices in my group that and one of those voices is the biggest voice in our room. So we are going to sing a waiata, and this is a waiata that was actually written by Morgan Simon, and that the reason why and all of you will know the waiata because it's quite famous around the country. And what happened was that he was actually running a hui at the time, and there were two opposing groups within it, and it created an absolute debacle in terms of trying to settle on the kaupapa. So he actually left the wharenui and went outside, and he was talking to another kaumātua, and they said, we need to bring the group back together again. And the group they said, yes, how should we do that? And he said, should we do it with karakia? And he went, no, we need to sing a song, but we need to sing a new song. And that's when he came up with a song which only has 4 lines, and it goes, te aroha, te whakapono, te aroha, te whakapono, me te wairua tapu. And that's how he created the song of te aroha. So if you ever sing that song with great gusto, remember it came from a little hui over in the Wanganui area, had a marae at a time when conflict was needing to be resolved, and it was resolved in the Song of Te Aroha. So this man over here's going to stand up with me. You explained this so well, Jared. And I'm not going to let him off the hook. So, and the rest of our whānau will stand too. You're standing. Yeah. So,
Councillors can stand.
yeah. So if you know it, please join in with us. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e tātou tātou e. So now you know the whakapapa to that song. Kia ora tātou.
And that was my cousin with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you all very much. It's been really, really informative. And I think in maybe early next year, maybe we'll have an update and see how things are going for you all. Might even be sooner. So thank you. Travel safely.
And we won't be late next time.
I'll get that in writing. Right, we'll move on with the agenda then. Are you getting a bit hot there, Carsten? Do you want the heaters turned off for a little while? It is getting pretty warm. Even I'm warm. It's pretty unusual.
I'll just repair the mic after the. Karen was getting carried away.
I'd like to just take this opportunity to welcome Carter to the top table for her first meeting at the top table. It's just fabulous to have you here with us. So this is your meeting as much as it is mine. So welcome. And so now we'll move on to the management report. Take it as read. Go through page by page. If there's any questions, just raise your hands, please. So page 7. 8. Page 9. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Chair Allison. Just having a quick look at the maintenance CRMs table, and just a really quick question on that. Are antenna reports included within those statistics? So I just noticed further down in the communications part of the report, there's some reporting on the antenna statistics. I'm just trying to make sure that what we're seeing is everything when it looks at those.
Through you, Chair Franklin, yes, they are included. Yes, thank you.
On to page 9. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Allison. Given the recent posting on Facebook around the vandalism occurring at our cemeteries, are these included in the CRM figures? They should be, shouldn't they? Yeah, okay. Obviously, the June will be not in here yet, but yeah.
I think we'll move on to page 10. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Chair Allison. Just looking at the camping ground statistics, and I was just trying to get my head around some of the occupancy. So looking at the table below, Ekirahuna in particular seems to have incredibly high occupancy, over 100%. I was having a look just at the top table, the capacity of 15. That should kind of almost have a maximum of 465 in a 31-day month. How is that worked out? Like, how can we be so above occupancy?
Being on site, if that, I guess it's the understanding of what that capacity means, because the hard stands alone would almost give that plus the tents and the cabin.
The stats that we received from directly from the manager, the campground managers. So I haven't queried that with them, but happy to.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, when we've got capacity at 170%, just trying to understand how that could be.
Any further questions on the campgrounds? On to page 11. Councillor Johns and Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Chair Ellison. With regard to the playgrounds, I'm a wee bit concerned about what might be taken out, simply because somebody's deemed the apparatus to be dangerous or whatever. And I go back some years to a slide, quite a tall slide in the Falcon Square, that it became a rite of passage for these little kids, you know, from 3 to 4 years of age. They'd climb up. My granddaughter went through the same process, climbed up to the top of the ladder, and then she'd chicken out and would come down again. And this happened about over months after coming up, and she'd want to go around to the slide to have another go. She'd get to the top, no, check it out, walk down again, and then she did it. Well, she was so overjoyed that she'd achieved something. Anyway, council in its wisdom decided, oh, it's dangerous. I don't think anyone died climbing up that ladder to the slide, or fell off and killed themselves or hurt themselves badly. But it was a tragedy to take that slide out. You ask anyone in Woodville how they felt about that. Don't repeat the exercise. That's what I'm suggesting, without consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. Councillor Gilmore, and then Mayor Tracy.
Thanks very much for that, Chair Ellison. I was just having a look at the concept drawing, which looks really cool. So just a couple of questions on that, because I'm quite cognizant of the fact that we made a decision recently to reduce PARS funding, and I'm sure that may have some consequences to playgrounds. So wondering, looking at that cool concept picture, do we have funding set aside for that concept, and for Woodville and in other towns? Does that just come out of our depreciation funding, or have we got money put aside for it? Or have we changed that all by our decision the other day?
Very good, Chair Franklin. I think you pretty much answered the question almost yourself, Councillor Gilmore. Yeah, so generally renewals are part of depreciation funding. Bearing in mind though, and looking over at Raj, it's not a hugely healthy fund either, so we need to be sort of careful. What we are proposing for any of sort of these compliance sort of changes, because we haven't actually put them through to the LTP in terms of renewals, would come back to council and make decision, but it would be using that renewal funding as funding to do this. Is probably going to be a lot less than what was originally planned. And just going back to Councillor Johns's view, yeah, I sort of agree on that. I actually remember I half agree that the debates we had around Mosquito Point and Wanganui with the swing that used to go out and people used to jump off it and go in a river, and did it for 100 years. Council had to remove that in the end, and people do get injured, but the risk of sort of litigation back then was less as well, and the risk of litigation seems to increase a little bit more over the years, where liability becomes a bit of an issue. But we'll be sensible about that. I think, to be fair, the slide at Mosquito Point, some of the drops at one point, depending that it was a tidal river, could be anywhere from 10 to 20 metres, so fairly dangerous. But there was a backlash even removing that. We're wrapping our kids up in cotton wool and all those sort of comments. So we'll bear that in mind.
Quick question. How do we stop children from jumping off the town bridge in Pai? We can't take the bridge away. And they jump off the top of those arches.
The exactly same question as well, hence why I've got an answer for that. I mean, it's the purpose of that bridge isn't to jump off, but if you've got a swing and a slide and all that, the purpose is to slide down and, it's a playground, people jump but people do jump off bridges, unfortunately, as well.
I understand the sentiment, having lost our slide in the gardens in Pahiatua and Hubbard Park. That's been the biggest drama, I think, since I've lived in 50 years in the district. So Mayor Tracy.
Thanks, Chair Alison. I am going to go back and reflect on Councillor John's comments around the slide in Woodville, because I remember that very well. And there was outrage from adults. And I guess one of my key learnings from that was actually we sit here and we make decisions as adults on what children want in their playground. And actually with that slide, because of the outrage in the community around that, we actually went into the school and consulted with the children and talked to them, not so much around removing the slide. We said actually that the slide is a health and safety risk. What do you want? What's your dream? What's your aspirations for the park? And that work will still be on file. But one of the biggest learnings that it taught me was actually a slide was well down their list of what they wanted. And of course, they started at the motorbike track, that was around the park. But actually, it led into they really wanted that connection with the trees and, something in there, which is why they got the climbing apparatus. But we involved them in that process. And I think if we want to involve our young people and people in council decision making, I'd really like it. You've only got one school in Woodville. It's, it would be great if you could, work with them and actually say, if we're changing something, what's your aspiration? So it was a good learning for me.
Tracy, through you, Chair Alison. Just to comment on that, I know at the time, you're talking to the kids at the school, most of those that would have commented would have been past the slide age. So it wasn't a priority for them. It's the younger age group still, even the preschoolers. So, yeah. Anyway, just make that comment.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. I'll go to Councillor Carey and then to Councillor.
Thanks, Chair Ellie. Just with respect to Peter's comments and others, just not to be the Grinch about this, but just reflecting on 3.71, most councillors here will probably remember that very sobering report from Jess about the state of our infrastructure in the district. And I wouldn't want any kids using some of the stuff that we had there. I mean, really, if we're realistic, and that's been a problem with some of the people here when we're taking away PAS funding and things, the condition of the playgrounds and things is pretty abysmal in places, and there's a lot of money. So it's easy to flick it off as don't worry about it, but it is it will only get worse too. And I think Carter's made the comment, more than minor maintenance needs and renewal to infrastructure. It certainly was a pretty sobering report that if we dig that one back out, a couple of years old now.
You just round things up, like you're talking historic things here. Like Norsewood doesn't have a flying fox now, but Pahiatua does. And reflecting what the CE said, because I had a ratepayer of Dannevirke come to me, and their daughter got hit in the eye and fractured her eye socket off the flying fox in Pahiatua. I said, do you want to take it further? She said, no, I feel quite guilty because they were our grandchildren. So it's a big nest. But going back to the consultation side of it, I didn't see any papers or anything about the flying fox being removed, or asked the children of the school of Norsewood about, because I used to take all my kids to Norsewood and play on that flying fox. So yeah, there's a lot of anomalies here that don't seem to run true, or consistent would be the word. I can feel the costs, and I can also recognise the health and safety aspects. So going forward, it could be a very interesting paper coming back to us about slides and bits and pieces, especially the way we handle it or haven't handled it.
Thank you, Councillor Steve. In terms of the Pahia tour, Flying Fox, my grandson absolutely loved it. So I always had to take him up the steps and go and stand up at the top. So one day after he'd done 4 shots, he handed me the rope and said, "Your turn, Nana." And I did it. And yes, and I survived.
Yeah.
I was terrified. Okay. Are there any further questions? We'll move on now then to community buildings, page 12. Page 13. Page 14.
Oh, excuse me.
Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Chair Ellison. 3.9, 3.9.1. But the assessment, is that in the previous year or this coming year?
In this coming year.
Thank you.
Tracy, you had a question?
Apologies, Chair Frank, there was just a comment around on Anzac Day going to the Woodville Services Cemetery and seeing the new signage there and how nice it was. I'm really pleased to see that we'll be getting it in the other cemeteries throughout the district. So thanks.
Thank you for that observation. I felt the same way. I think it's really, really smart, and it's going to have longevity. It will never date. So we'll move on now to page 16, page 17, page 18. Councillor Scott.
Thanks very much, Chair Ellison. Just jumping back to page 17, 4.2.1. Just looking in the table through you to Carter, I see there is a note there saying that the locations where the meetings were held, and they don't necessarily reflect the area of operation of the group scene. I wonder if it's something that's easy to do for a future report, it would actually be really handy to be able to see the areas where the groups are based that are getting that support. I find it quite a powerful story to be able to share with people the support that can be offered. And when we just look at that in face value, it does look like the support's very, very centred in a couple of areas. So I'd be quite keen to see where the groups that are getting support are from.
Through you, Chair Franklin, noted. I'll talk to the team about that. Okay, thank you.
So we'll move back on to page 18. Page 19. We're now into community connection, economic development. Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Thank you, Councillor Johns.
Just one, Chair Ellison. Is the trailer finished yet and operational?
For you, Chair Franklin, not yet. So the engineer who's been refurbishing it was not well, but I think next month when Colin comes back from holiday, he's gonna finish it off with the engineer.
Councillor Scott.
Through you, Chair, just the trailer. Just a query. I remember some time ago talking about it. If it's going to be used in civil defence or anything like that, should it have hooks on it to be helicoptered into areas? Looking at roads being closed or rivers washing out bridges and things like that. I don't know the weight of it.
Copped it in, more after the fact. Yeah.
Councillor Long. We'll move on now to page 23. Page 24. And page 25. that's that management report. Could somebody please move that report? Oh, and more, sorry. Looked like it came to a stop. Oh, I do apologise. Yes, page 26. Info Centre breakdown. Page 27. Community grants. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. Page 32. Page 33. Page 34. Page 35. Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39. Page 40. Page 41. Page 42. Page 43. Oh, Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Chair Allison. Sorry to break the run. Just a quick question on 9.33U to Carter, I think. It just has a note there about active members. Could we get a definition of what an active member is? And maybe if you don't have it here, that's absolutely fine. I'm just wondering, does an active member mean someone in that month that has used a book, or is it once a year? I'm just trying to work out what active member.
Through you, Chair Franklin, I believe it's anyone who has an active membership, but I will double check whether these are per month. Yeah, I believe whoever has an active membership. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Maybe just to clarify, because it's a percentage of the membership that is the active membership. What I'm trying to determine is what makes someone an active member. What do they have to do to be active? So, and it might be that they do it, they borrow a certain amount of times per year, or there must be a threshold that turns someone from a member into an active member.
Yes, because I don't know how they calculate membership, because there are no cards issued these days. You don't have to be a member to utilise the library, as I understand it. So yeah, I must admit, I looked at those figures and I thought they're very low, particularly if it was a percentage of membership. But I don't think membership exists.
Chair Franklin, I believe you have to be registered with the library as a member, so you'll be able to use the library as a facility and take out the books. And yeah, I think that's what an active membership is.
Perhaps it would be quite good to actually find out how many active members there are. Oh, Brian knows.
No.
Right,
I think this is discussed a little bit last time. And we'll just make sure it's a bit clearer. Sorry.
Through you, Chair. We'll make sure it's a bit clearer next time. It does say they disallowed active members to be counted up to 12 times in the overall statistic, which we acknowledge isn't particularly helpful. So over 18.4% of the memberships were active in terms of being used. I'd say they're 12 times. So, but I think we do need to get a bit of clarification around that. It's probably not very well described.
And thanks very much for that, Brian. And sorry, I don't want to take too much time for this. It was more just to help us with future reports. I think it was that last line shows that there is a threshold of what turns someone from a member into an active member. So presumably we have a lot of inactive members, but and look, totally fine if things have been double counted. Great that it's been picked up, but I would like us to be able to have a good view of what our library utilisation's like, what our membership looks like, and how often people are using it.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful because I think, libraries are becoming more than just issuing books. So how we're using it, what are we using, and how we're calculating what actually active should be actually more than just the times they sign out a book, internet use, etc. So yeah, good point.
Yeah, through you, Chair Ellison. Yeah, I read that as if somebody goes in there 13 times, they only count at 12. Because otherwise you could just get a whole people in and out, in and out, in and out. So they go in there, and after 12 times they've been in there, that's it. So 20% basically, the way I read this report, 20% of people use our libraries in the district per town. And actively, anything over 12 times you go in there, you're not counted. Well, you are, but in this report, because you could there'd be 12 ladies going to that library every day and they don't want to count. You imagine if you had a counter on there and those 12 people come in every day, and so that's if you're using, let's make it 20% out of 100. So 20% every day is always those active members. So it doesn't give you a true indication. So that's why they cap it, put it that way. They cap it at 12. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, that highlights the need for us to make something a bit clearer. Yeah.
What about facial recognition like we have in airports?
It's not too far off, if you'd be perfectly honest. It's probably been used in more places than you realise.
Good at new world.
Going to page 44. Page 45. Page 46. The end of the report. That's a very, very comprehensive report. Thanks, Carter. Really, really extensive. A lot of really good information in there. So could somebody please move that the report be received? Councillor Scott, second, and Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, we'll move on to Mike. Done. The chair is yours.
Yeah, councillors. Capital program report, happy to take it as read, and I'll just move through it as page by page. If there's any questions, happy to take them as they come. So overall, we're working to the baseline as rescheduling, considering the workers with the LTP, and inclusive of that is some of the direction with the new Paeatua pool. So that's where some of our scheduling sits, and the budgeting as well needs to be, some of it needs to be reviewed following the decisions with PARS and upgrading council owned reserves. So that is a couple of the main pieces within this portfolio that we're looking at. Considering that, we have the projects by state and by status. I think everything, to be fair, looks quite positive in that way. And we are wrapping up at the end of this financial year as well. So that should be reflected in future reports, in particular for carry forwards. I'm happy to step through, though, the project updates from 6 and then into the project sheets.
Excuse me, Mike. Councillor Sharon, followed by Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Chair Ellison. I love the picture. I love 4.1, but I'm trying to understand the difference between underway and delivery. What's the difference between the black at the top, and I like seeing that deep blue at the bottom, rising. But what is the difference between black underway and delivery?
Yeah, for sure. So this is because a couple of these projects also include some of our operational projects, and we've got different workflow for some of those ones. So that one there will just be a really minor sort of less complex, should I say, project that just has a less complex workflow. So it'll just go from underway to a completed.
And it won't necessarily show on your project sheets, that sort of stuff then, might.
Not all that kind of detail, no, but.
And just some on from that. So we've nearly got a whole year's picture. Given some of the decisions that we're obviously still working on out of the LTP, do you get a sense that blue will carry on going up, or we're going to start to see some changes in the mixture of this beautiful rainbow? I like it. No, I'm not taking the mickey. This is a really good demonstration of how we're actually doing the work. So
No, so yeah, at the moment, I'd see us wrapping up the end of this financial year, and we'd look at restarting this. I mean, like, it's obviously we've developed it quite a long way, and it'll be reflective as well that we'll just show you the ones that we've been carrying forward, and you'll see those ones. But other than that, we should be closing off the majority of these, and then that'll be reflected in the end of year financial report.
Johns?
So, Chair Tracy, Alison. Yeah, Mike, page 53, the district town signage. Scott and I were at Positively Woodville meeting last night, and the monthly question came up: where the hell are our signs? Town and the district without them, and the others have been there for a couple of years now. So I asked the question. I see here that the handover of the project has occurred and it'll be transitioned for reporting into the infrastructure committee. That tells me, it doesn't tell me when the bloody signs are going to be put up. I realise there's a frangibility issue, but is there a frangibility issue with all the other town signs? Or was it just Woodville?
No.
I see. Sorry, did you want to?
Update the meeting on the road safety meeting where Waka Kotahi were in the room and talked around frangibility and why and the working with her on that.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah, she absolutely did, and she thought it was very, very positive. Shared back what was discussed, and it's stuff that's been discussed with us for over a year without movement. So I think we are still quite keen to see where things might be going. I would be surprised if it can be resolved as easily as the chair has suggested. Pleasantly surprised. I'd be quite disappointed if after all of our questioning on it for a huge amount of time hasn't been able to resolve it, but one meeting at a road safety forum has been able to.
I think it was more the fact that you had the key person from what kind of present, so we were able to hear him as opposed to going through anywhere else. But happy to share his contact details. It's probably the most positive change that I saw in their understanding. So whether it was an interpretation or not, but he was coming back to him.
Yeah. One of the questions is frangibility of the signs only an issue for Woodville, not the other towns?
Through you, Chair Franklin.
So are the Woodville towns different in some way from the other towns?
It's across the district is my understanding, and it's not just for Woodville.
I suspect Waka Kotahi are saying all the right things but doing nothing.
On the transition for this, it seems that I've obviously got some catching up to do on some of this project. So it's, some of it sounds positive, so I'm going to go with that. The reason for that is that the last thing we did was we did the handover. There's been a few people that have been working on it, and from there, the transition to the infrastructure part, we have a portfolio programming projects meeting in the next 2 days, of which I'm going to be getting an update there. So I'll know more in another 2 days.
Through you, Chair Franklin. So the town signage, what I can't say is had a meeting with the Alliance and Hamish's team about a month ago, and you will see some changes fairly soon. Early yesterday, I was at the Alliance to get an update on the town signage project, and I was told by Andrew, who's the manager, that they are working with Waka Kotahi to get the signage, weather dependent. One of the signs, the Ekitahuna, I believe, is going to be erected probably this week or next week, and will be replaced. And so there is definitely change and movements in the town signage.
One's been taken.
It's the other one in the middle of the public school.
First. They are working with yes, NZTA. So the Alliance team are working with NZTA to get the town signage.
I will just throw in the end there as well as just a couple of pieces. It's just as a reminder, I suppose, is that we initially had handed over a massive handover as well to Mark Ellingham at the time. He was working through it. He's since departed. We've gone through a bit of turbulence in that and resourcing it, but we have managed to get it to where I think it needs to sit. So with that, that's where I've been with it. So I'll get again another one in the next couple of days, acknowledging still though that it is maybe not a critical, but definitely a high interest project. So we'll still maintain an update.
Your ribbon cutting ceremony like that.
Councillor Steve.
Yeah, no, it's a great subject, the signs. As you want some, I want to try and get rid of some. I've had this on the table since I started, and I had a chat with the mayor when I first got elected, and she said, yes, we'll get onto that and get rid of them. But yeah, anyhow, Jim gave me the rundown on the signage. But I must commend Paiatua on this. Paiatua has only got 2 of these signs. We've got 12 in the CBD in Dannevirke. I'm trying to make Dannevirke an attractive tourist attraction to come to, not a no-no town. So please, you must see these signs. There's 12 of them in the CBD. As I say, Paiatua, and it must be going back to your comment, Peter, something about your town doesn't get a main sign, we get no-no signs. So, and Paiatua, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. While we're on signs too, I note that the sign up on the Paiatua track has been graffitied again. Just a quick question. Has the anti-graffiti product been applied to these signs? Because it certainly has worked at the skate park in Paiatua. Just a thought.
Sorry, I'm not aware.
Oh, I only saw it like yesterday, so I will.
Yeah, the signs are invisible.
Okay, so that's we've got through that part of the report, so we move on to the worksheets. Building iwi capacity. Any questions? Any questions on the digitisation of council records? Future community urban design. And actioning council's PARS strategy.
This report would have been prepared before the last council decision.
Right, so it's said as well that change it, but
Yeah, we're following the latest decision for the PARS with 200 it's been distributed, shall we say. It's currently been messaged as well through CIP and then further on to DIA. So current indications of that entire shift look quite positive at this current stage.
Right. That wraps up the capital program report. Could somebody please move that the report be received? Councillor Steve, seconded Mayor Tracy. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That brings us to the close of the meeting. Before we close though, this is not an item of introducing anything new, but I want to ask the council what their appetite is for inviting Trust House along to our next meeting. And the reason for that was this week, the editor of the Wairarapa Times Age wrote an extremely informative editorial about the trust and how it is operating and the suspicions around how the monies are being allocated from what money is coming in. Very much pointed out the neglect of money spent on their public housing since they took it over, and we know we've got an issue here. Would there be an appetite to have them come and explain where they're at with this? Throwing it out there. Councillor Long?
How many houses in Tararua region with that trust?
Before New Zealand Carbon Farming, they were our largest ratepayer.
Yes.
Sorry, Mayor Ellison, apologies. Chair Ellison, and the one in Cole Street, are they theirs too?
No.
No, they're going more.
So that was Kaingaroa today? That's Rangatawa. I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed. Kaingaroa is New Zealand Housing. So then we've got Trust Housing and Rangatani Housing. So we've got 4 housing. Right, and a team.
Good idea, right along there.
Okay, cool. I'd really be really keen to do that. On Councillor Ward?
While we're putting out some ideas for, I'd also like to put out to you, Chair Ellison, perhaps an update from Tararua Health Group. Usually,
next meeting.
oh, fantastic, because
They were coming today, but David was going on holiday, so he's definitely coming to the next meeting, as is Jeannie O'Brien from the Youth Services, just to give us an update on where things are at there too. I'm just trying to keep this committee informed about all the social things that we need to know, so that's already in place.
thank you very much.
Okay, so if there no further business, I'll declare the meeting closed at 2:52. And did you want to invite everybody to the